Sometimes that is better.
Under the eye, gonna wear the steamboats, ancient goblins and warlords come at the ground, not making a sound. The smell of death is all around. In the night when the cold wind blows, nobody cares, nobody knows. I don't wanna be buried in a bed.
Welcome back, Sinners, to another episode of Saturday Night Cinema. As always, I am your host, Sawyer St. Sin. And tonight starts April. And what did I say we were talking about in April? That's right, resurrection. So, zombies and all of that good stuff. And tonight, well, sometimes dead is better, right? Talking about Pet Sematary, not the remake, the one that came out April 21st, 1989. That's right. Directed by Mary Lambert, which she did this movie, like the notable ones that I know that she did. She did this movie, she did the Pet Sematary 2, which came out like 90 something. And then she also did Halloween Town 2, Calabar's something. Anyway, she did Halloween Town 2. And for all of you that grew up with the Disney Channel originals like I did, then you understand. So, of course, this was adapted from a Stephen King novel that was published in 83. I believe that's what I remember from looking up. I haven't read that novel. I've read a bunch of Stephen King novels, but I haven't read that one. And of course, he wrote the screenplay for this one as well. So let's get on into the cast, which has a lot of familiar faces. So first we have Dale Midkiff as Lewis Creed. We have his wife, who is played by Denise Crosby. That's Rachel. We have their son, played by Miko Hughes, which was like the little blonde kid in like every movie, Kindergarten Cop and so forth and so forth. So he plays Gage Creed. Then we have the twin sisters, Blaze, and I think it's pronounced Bo. Oh my gosh. We're just going to call them Blaze and Bo. They played Ellie Creed. So, because of scheduling and whatnot, they usually have twins for the younger kids to play both parts. And then we have Brad Greenquist, I think I'm pronouncing that right, as Victor Pascal. Now, Pascal reminds me a lot of Jack from, An American Werewolf in London, right? Where he's seen as an apparition after he's died. He doesn't go through the same decay process as what Jack does. We always see him in the same, state in which he passed. But he does give me that same feeling of the foreboding, the trying to, be the one to kind of stop them. The good side versus the evil that is kind of present throughout the movie. And then last but not least, we have Fred, and you guys, I always forget how to pronounce his last name.
Gwen.
Sorry.
Gwen.
It's just, it's I guess because it's I guess I forget how to pronounce it because it's spelled so differently than what like I like see Gwen.
Herman Munster.
Yes, I know he's Herman Munster. I know. I'm just saying that I always forget how to pronounce it because it's spelled so differently than any other time that I see Gwen. Anyways, he plays Judd. Gosh. I know. Roast me as much as you need to. But anyways, yes, Herman Munster. Yeah. And so, if you don't know already, I mean, if you haven't known, the soundtrack is just basically the score, which I have to say, now, like, hearing it as an adult, and also the fact that we just watched The Exorcist, like, not too long ago, like, the beginning, song, like the credit song, the intro song into the movie, does give me a lot of like Exorcist vibes as to how it feels and kind of, you know, the way that it flows. But there's only literally 2 songs on the soundtrack. Both of them are by one of my favorite bands of all time. Yes, the Ramones. One is Sheena is a Punk Rocker, classic. And the other one was Pet Sematary. Now, you know, of course, Stephen King was a huge fan of the Ramones as well, so I bet he was really stoked when, you know, they said that they would do a song for the movie. I would be if my favorite band was like, yeah, here you go. What's up? But so, let's get into the movie, shall we? Alright, so we're in a small town in Maine. A young doctor moves his family to this house that is on one of the most terrifying roads in America, it seems like, where there's just these huge semi-trucks just kind of barreling down the road. You kind of get a sense, almost right off the bat, that Mr. Creed, Lewis, feels that something is going to happen to them. You almost immediately feel that from him. We start off with kind of this sense of something isn't quite right. I mean, heck, like, they literally pull into the driveway. Their child, Ellie, is swinging on a tire swing, and it cracks, and she's, like, yelling for help. And as she's doing that, Gage is, like, literally, like, inches away from, you know, the road where the trucks are whizzing by. So, we already have a very uneasy feeling in our stomachs. But, you know, the new neighbor, you know, scoops him up before anything can happen. And we meet Judd, the nice old man that's been living in that town since, you know, he was born. Super, God, I just love him. So they see a path, you know, Judd takes them up to the path. It's a pet cemetery that children have made, which I know that sounds very morbid, but children have made because unfortunately that road takes a lot of lives of dogs and cats. It's just, you know, why did the cat cross the road? I don't know, to get hit by a semi. So, you know, that kind of gives Ellie a gateway into, like, you know, into death, right? It's not very cool, it's not very nice, but it's a way that things happen, right? So, first day on the job at the college, Mr. Creed has a poor young man, Mr. Pascal, who gets hit by a truck. And he does what he can do to save him, but unfortunately there's just, you know, he's not equipped in, you know, the college doctor's office to handle that kind of accident. But while he's, you know, there's one jump scare where he's trying to tell him to, like, don't go beyond where the dead speak, which is what they said about the cemetery, right? This is the place where the dead speak. But you know, he just kind of like, you know, brushes it off, goes home, goes to bed. Pascal ends up there at his house in his bedroom, takes him to the pet cemetery, explains to him again, do not go beyond where the dead speak. Don't go to where the dead walk. You know, the ground is sour. Stay away. He thinks it's all a dream. He wakes up, there is mud and dirt all over his feet. And it's really funny because in in one of the shots you see the picture of Gage, you know, where he and his like dirty nasty feet all like in one shot, and it's kind of like, but over the Thanksgiving holiday, the wife Rachel takes her kids to Chicago to be with family. Lewis hangs back because, hey, your dad doesn't like me and I don't want to spoil Thanksgiving. So he hangs back, but lo and behold, even after getting Church, the cat, neutered, well, Church gets hit by a truck. And Judd, feeling that Ellie doesn't need to, you know, deal with the loss of her favorite pet right at the moment, decides to take Lewis to where the dead walk. Now listen to me. The amount of time that it takes them to get to this old Indian burial ground, I would have just gone to the pet store and got a new fucking cat. Just saying. Because it was like over the mountain and through the woods to grandma's house we go. Like it was, he didn't get home until like really late. Like it's like midnight, right? But Ellie calls and she's like, hey dad, like, you know, I had this dream about Church that he got hit. Like, you know, I need to make sure that he's okay. And, you know, he's like, yeah. And he's very, you know, weird about it. And he's like, yeah, like cat's fine. And she's like, well, give him a kiss for me. And he's like, ew, gross, kiss your own cat. Which, like, to me is funny. But lo and behold, Church comes back. He smells and reeks of death, but he's back. And he's got a taste for not cat food, but for raw ass meat, you guys. The best scene to me with Church is Lewis is getting ready to take a nice hot bath. He gets in, he gets settled, and what does Church do? Drops a big old dead rat into the bathtub. Man, he jumps out of that bath so fast, it would make your head spin. It's so funny though. So, you know, family comes back. You know, the kid's like, man, Church stinks. Like, he needs a bath, you know, and they just kind of go on about their, you know, their time. So springtime rolls around and they're out playing. They have a kite. It's a beautiful day. They let Gage fly the kite. And well, I mean, he's a toddler. He accidentally lets go of it. And he's like, oh no. So while no one is watching this toddler, where we know that there's a dangerous road, hello, he goes running after the kite. And the truck driver is too busy rocking out to Sheena as a punk rocker, which, listen, I can't blame him. It's a great song. It's fantastic. But yeah, Gage gets hit because if you know anything about semi-trucks, you can't just slam on the brakes in those. Like, it takes a while to get that mass behind that to actually stop. So we see the funeral where The grandfather completely freaks out, starts fighting with Mr. Creed, knocks over Gage's casket. It's a fiasco. So Rachel and Ellie decide to go back to Chicago for a while, just kind of, get their heads together after the loss of Gage. And Lewis wants to wrap some things up at the hospital. Judd is like, listen, we ain't doing this. We ain't going to the burial ground. He tells a story of a young man who, died before he was able to make it home from World War II, and that he came back and there was something wrong. He was not the same person, and they had to end up, taking care of it, which was just burning him alive, basically. But even after Judd tells Lewis, like, get that out of your head, don't think about it, don't do it, nothing good can come of it, and he feels that he is responsible for the horrible thing that has happened to Gage due to introducing him to that evil, right? So back in Chicago, Ellie's having these dreams, and she's like, Pascal, like, something's wrong. Like, she just keeps saying these things. And, finally Rachel gets kind of like, well, not visited. She doesn't see Pascal. He's just like a presence there. And she finally gets it. She's like, oh my gosh, like, that's the name of the guy that, Creed was working on when he died. And she immediately, like, has to go see what's up. Oh, and in between we're seeing snippets of her sister and how she died of spinal meningitis, and the evil is kind of like, trying to like play tricks and take over people's mind, right? So back in Maine, Mr. Creed digs up the body of Gage, and watching this now as a parent, I have to say that him digging up the body of his child and holding it, cradling it really tightly in his arms, really speaks to a whole new level of emotions for me. So he carries Gage's body off to the Indian burial ground. He buries him. Of course, Gage comes back. And Gage goes and gets, to quote my lovely husband, his tiny doctor dagger. Now, known to you as a scalpel, but yeah, that's sure what he said, tiny doctor dagger. And he decides to first go over to, the neighbor's house and play with him, where he, plays hide and seek, and then cuts his Achilles tendon, and then, like, starts, eating out his larynx in his throat. It's so fun. And then Rachel comes home, and the evil is trying to stop her every step of the way. This, like, evil force is trying to stop her every step of the way. But she starts hearing, things coming from the neighbor's house. So instead of going home, she goes over there, and, well, Gage decides to play with Mommy. And then the morning comes, and the dad wakes up, and he gets a phone call from the grandfather in Chicago saying that Ellie is hysterical. She wants to talk to her mom, and Lewis didn't know that she was coming, so he's like shocked, and he's like, no, yeah, she made it, she's sleeping, you know, whatever. And he like just hangs up on him, because he notices like Gage's little dirty footprints, right? And so he's like gonna go down to the garage where he kind of sees the footprints going, or the basement, I'm sorry, when he gets another phone call, and it's Gage, and he's like, hey daddy, come over. Like, I play with mommy, now it's time to play with you. Right? Really creepy. It's really creepy. So he goes over there, and at first, like, everything looks like, well, it looks like that scene from Creepshow, the Geordie, you know, where everything's like covered in like grass and moss and stuff. So it looks like that. But, you know, it's just the evil playing tricks on him, trying to scare him, you know. So he goes upstairs. Gage starts attacking him. Gets him pretty good with, like, the scalpel and, like, the biting him and everything. But in the end, you know, the needle is mightier than the scalpel, I guess. You know, he injects the newly resurrected zombie Gage with some kind of drug. I don't know. I'm not really for sure what it is. And as the cutest little, you know, zombie Gage backing away going, not fair, no fair, daddy, no fair. Falling all over the place, dying. Now, if everything leading up to this point wasn't like, you know, like, hey, like, this isn't a good idea, don't do this. Mr. Creed takes down his wife from the noose that she's hanging on, and, yeah, carries her off to the Indian burial ground. And Pascal again, like, shows up, and he's like, hey, don't do this. Like, hello, did you not just, like, see what happened to the cat and to your, like, son? Like, they're evil. Like, let's not do this, right? But Mr. Creed thinks that it's different this time. It hasn't been that long. She hasn't been dead for long. It'll be different. Well, you know, she comes back, and it's not different. She picks up a knife, and we don't actually see her, like, kill him, but we hear, like, ah, you know. It's so, and then that's the end. And then, you know, ending credits roll, and we get to hear Pet Sematary. You know, I'm not gonna sing it because I don't want to be copyright. You know, I don't want to be copyright struck it down. But, you know. Anyways, so that's Pet Sematary. If you haven't seen it, see it. It's great. It's fantastic. I absolutely love the movie. I've loved it since, you know, I first saw it. It's great. But so next week, I mean, technically, you know, Pet Sematary, they're not like your typical, like, zombie, but they did get resurrected, and they do eat flesh a little bit. But next week we're going to do, like, a proper, well, can't necessarily say it's a proper zombie movie, but it's a zombie movie, and it has one of my favorite actors in it, a Mr. Steve Buscemi. It's gonna be Ed and his dead mother. So join me next week for a little horror comedy action, right? All right, guys. Until next week, have a great one. Bye.